Today is July 4th, 2022, and we decided to take the 8-mile drive from the rental house that we're working on near Woodburn to go to Brooks, Oregon to see the Powerland. This is a combination of many museums all on one big property that one time was farmland. And so we're going to see what all it has to offer. We knew the people that owned this farmland property before it was ever turned into a museum, and we even rented him some farmland to farm on our place and worked with him, and so we knew the family quite well.
Here, so we have welcome to, here's that little tree. What is that? The donation. It says, over the last 35 years we have continually upgraded our railroad. First from 600 feet single loop in the grass with no trees in 1975 to 1,500 and finally to what you see today. 1 mile of mainline track consisting of 3 loops, a new car barn station cover and lots of trees. We have also installed a new bridge and work goes on for the new creek and more is on the way. We have a lot of history here and want to keep getting better. This is where you can help. Practically all of our operation revenue comes from donations from giving rides. We do not receive any part of the entrance fees from Western Antique Powerland or the Great Oregon Steam Up. We depend on your donations.
There's absolutely no end to the things you see here, from an old tour car to an old thrash machine. And these were particularly interesting to me because I remember when we used to thrash with one of these old machines on our ranch in Montana, and I even helped when I was a young boy. Then the straw came out. The straw was blown out this pipe here, and they could even regulate where they wanted the straw to be blown. And there were many tractors here, some from the recent past and some from a long time ago. This old case looks like it was a powerful old, really heavy-duty, rough old tractor. And it has the old crank to start it. And you have to know how to use those cranks or it'll backfire and break your wrist. Many other tractors that were from the recent past are parked in this shed to be preserved for future generations to see how things were done at one time. There are more old thrash machines here under the shed roof to preserve them. Here's an old steam tractor with the huge wheels, and even has some wood to fire it with. And most of these old tractors still run, and they do use them for demonstration purposes. The large round wheel on it right here is called the flywheel that you hook a belt on, and it runs to the thrash machine. And if you want something to turn the opposite direction, you just twist the belt once and you've got it. Looks like a place where you can buy books.
Paperback in for $2.25 each.
This is exactly what Marge was wanting. It's a bookstore where you can buy books at a very reasonable price, and she loves books, particularly old recipe books. She'll probably take more of them than I can carry. This is all in front of the old railroad Depot Museum, which was the real one for Brooks, and they moved it in here, and they're trying to stock it with period type things. The old typewriter and desk, all from that period of time, and an old scale. Some wheat all bagged up and ready to ship out, sitting next to the old coal or wood stove in the old railroad depot.
This is not really connected, but run through it when the lights like that.
Oh yeah.
So, and here's a map of the area and the old towns that are no longer there.
Oh yeah. Due to modern transportation, a lot of the old towns just didn't make it, and so they're no longer there. You don't need them with good transportation. Just a lot of the things that are typical of an old railroad station are in this building, including a lot of old pictures of things that used to be. Yeah.
They have lots of nice books for history.
There's the picture of the St. Louis school where Marge went for 8 years, and then her high school annual is on display. Marge is the one in the lower right-hand corner of the picture that she's pointing to herself there. Her hairdo was a bit on the kinky side. I didn't care for it too much. And there again is the old school where she went to grade school. An old hop basket hangs high on the wall. That's what you would pick hops in. And she said she hated to pick hops. And there's a picture of her again in the annual. She was the president of the Girls Athletic Association.
That's the store you
and then
used to
the old St. Louis
where you lived
store.
Yeah, it's on the corner.
Yeah, and buy soda pop and bread or whatever.
There's an old Pace tractor.
A grain cleaning, fanning mill. An old homemade saw. And a little engine. That's a spring tooth. Here's an old tractor. On a Fresno.
They have a few logs here, and they must fire up one of those old sawmills and saw some lumber. And lots of old steam engines that have escaped the scrap yards and are on display here. Most of them have been fixed up till they run perfectly too, and they fire them up and thrash some grain. And they even have a farm here where they do a little bit of farming. They've got it in grain, and this fall they'll cut it and thrash it, and if you'd want, you could go there and watch the thrashing process done with the old steam engines. And these old steam engines are either fired with coal or wood, and boy, they're powerful old machines when they get them fired up and going. It's well worth the time it takes to go see these machines and actually see them running and working. Case sure made a pretty tractor in the past.
These steam engines most all had a big belt drive thing where you'd hook a horsehide belt or something on it and run other equipment with it. Big pretty steam engine. There's the belt drive wheel. And a little steam engine with a belt drive on it.
Marge is going to get up on this monster of a tractor and show us just exactly how to drive one of these big machines. They were very, very interesting. Must have been really fun to drive.
Yeah. Wow, that's a huge piece of equipment. Must have had all sorts of power.
An engine.
Uh-oh, it looks like Marge is hungry, and they have a few places around this place. This place is absolutely huge, and you can order whatever you would like. Ice cream cones or whatever. There's a shop for everything. And so that's a real welcome relief for her since she's getting hungry. Then we'll go to the John Deere Tractor Museum, and it's good. I think this is an old hammer mill, again with the old belt drive on it that you could hook onto a steam engine or any kind of engine that had a pulley for driving a large belt. And then John Deere tractors all fixed up nice and pretty, all sorts of them on display in this museum. And John Deere was one of the favorites of the farmers in this area.
You don't realize how far up that is. I mean, how high you are.
Save the date.
And another thing with tractors was these had a problem. They didn't put road gears in. So Minneapolis, Moline, Case, Farmall, they started putting road gears on the tractors because Minneapolis was doing it. They found that farmers were going further to feed different fields. They weren't just that targeted. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
some,
You know what?
I've been on fire, yeah.
There are even some old tractors outside with for sale signs on them. If you were a generation or two back, you might have wanted to buy one of these to use on the farm. They were good old tractors and they're not really that expensive.
They were already restored all the time.
And then to the Machine Shop Museum, which has all sorts of old steam stuff, and they even rebuild a lot of things in here, and it's actually still working. You can see the old belts driving the equipment for the machine shop, and some of these were used in the Portland area just till recent times, and there's still people that have memories of these exact machines. Our next stop will have to be to the Truck Museum and pay tribute to the big rigs that clog our highways and make all that noise and haul us everything we need. Since our country was getting built up to be big city type things, we need big trucks to haul food and materials around to people. And so throughout the 1900s and up to the present, we have big rigs, and they're on display here. Some of the newer antique big rigs are in here, and then some of the older. So this is definitely one of the stops you need to make. It's the Truck Museum, and there's a small entrance fee when you come in the park, and then it seems like all the rest of these museums are free. The truckers are almost like the seafaring men. They've built up a legend around their job, and it's a tough job, grinding these old trucks over the hills and the mountains. No matter what the weather is, you have to be there and run them. And so they have a good display of trucks from several different ages here. There's a totally amazing display of trucks of all shapes and sizes in this museum. There won't be time on this video to show you all of them, but I'll try to go through a little bit of the highlights of them. And then you need to go there and see them for yourself. It's a total fantastic collection of trucks of all sizes and age to keep those big wheels rolling, to bring you fuel. Heating fuel used to be a big item they used in all the food you eat and the materials you use, even milk. Another real big item that helped in the development of our nation, the building of roads, clearing the land and logging to get lumber for building, and every other thing you can think of is displayed here in the Caterpillar Museum. Unfortunately, we couldn't go inside because it wasn't open today, but they had a fair display of old road graders. A peek through the window didn't do much for us at the Caterpillar Museum, so we'll go on. Just a short distance down the road is a museum dedicated to motor vehicles, and this is for motorcycles and antique cars, and what a collection they have. If you wanted to travel in style in the early 1900s, here's what you would drive. Wow, would those ever be fun to drive? Would I love to have one? There's a from 1910 to 1936, and all sorts and shapes of cars that would been really some prestigious cars and some just plain old work cars that you would drive to go to town to get groceries or to work. That was in the age where cars were built pretty simple. If you had a little bit of basic knowledge about them, you could repair them yourself. There wasn't all this computer stuff and other equipment needed. Everything you needed to fix them was there, and some of them even came with a crank. When the darn thing wouldn't start, you'd go out, crank it and crank it and crank it, and hope it didn't backfire and break your wrist. One thing that wasn't too good about these cars were their tires. Those tires, if you went on a trip, you had to take several spares, but that's no problem. You just took a few tires along, took it apart, and fixed it yourself, and then went on about your way. And some of the older ones, the gas tank was just a gravity feed for it, and if you were going up a steep hill, sometimes they worked better if you backed up the hill, like this old car would have probably backed up the hill a little better than it went up it forward. but it sure seemed good to see these old cars that you can relate to from another century. When I was a kid growing up, I had a 1928 Ford, and wow, was that a neat car. And every time I'd go someplace in it, it would usually get me there, but then when it come to coming back home, it never would run the full round trip, so everybody just got out and pushed till you got it home. And they weren't real heavy, they were pretty easily pushed. There's a museum here for everyone and everything, as long as it's something with power equipment, especially. And then they have, on special occasions, they have a Civil War reenactment. And I have pictures of that. I'll get them on next Tuesday.